Welcome to the Tesla Power Podcast. This is where we're building the Tesla energy community. We're covering solar panels, solar roof, and Powerwall for your home. I'm Aaron Brady, and today, let's talk about a couple of community members that have been bit by changing their Tesla solar order. Let's ask the question, will batteries ever pay for themselves? And let's talk about batteries without solar, and a lot more. Let's do it. And like we usually do, we'll kick off the pod with community input. You can participate in a few ways. You can leave a comment below. You can link your YouTube videos. You can call 203-816-5150. Or you can email teslapowerpodcast@gmail.com. First up, we have a comment from DA Poppa. He outlines how a change to his project has bit him in the rumpus. Let's read it. Quote, changing your order. My electrician made a change and it really messed up the whole project. He moved the installation and now we're scrambling to get past. Originally, we had the installation in the shade at the rear of the house. He moved it to the west wall directly in the afternoon Florida sun. End quote. And it really sucks to hear that. I mean, on the plus side, baby, it's not Tesla screwing you on permits or applications this time. I'm also surprised to hear that putting the equipment in the sun matters at all. I mean, I kind of thought that the whole point of this is that it was to work in the sun. Isn't that the whole point, right? I do hope, though, that you're able to get this stuff sorted quickly. It's one of the worst things, being so close and yet so far from being able to use this new significant investment in your home. All right, next is an email. This comes from Rick and Kathy. They put more color on their battery purchase. Quote, in all honesty, we will never really see any payoff for the batteries. We knew that going in. But we never see a payoff from the electric company either, and all the time at their mercy. They don't cut our bill down when we lose 25 hours a year of power when the grid goes out. Isn't our time valuable sitting with no power? Yet they want their money on time each month. We've been considering a whole house generator, and the Powerwalls, they're only $3,000 higher, and we can use them every day rather than having a generator sitting till the power is out, end quote. And this is probably a more accurate value proposition for batteries. I mean, no one's looking to pay for their backup generator, right? It's there for insurance. It's there for convenience and peace of mind. And straight up, if it's less maintenance and it's more convenient, more useful, it's certainly worth the premium. Now, I want to go back to your point that the utility doesn't reduce your bill to compensate for downtime. I mean, ironically, they probably have to actually charge you more to cover for emergency expenses and infrastructure repairs. You know, this is apart from just general infrastructure improvements, which they will also charge you more for. So this starts to open a can of worms when you think about it. I mean, you know, there's overhead power lines, all the infrastructure that's out in open air and that's, vulnerable to severe weather. I don't know. The power companies don't seem to invest in resilience in the grid in very many places. I mean, some places they'll put the power lines underground and they'll put transmission stations inside buildings so they're protected from weather. But often you just see them right out in the open. So, they're spending all this money just to patch up poorly implemented grids grids that have been implemented poorly in the first place. But I hear you. You haven't done a payback calculation. I get that you don't have much data. It's a moving target as you look at other home services. I mean, those are probably they're going to be more significant in the way that it affects the whole calculation anyway. So thank you for the input, the two of you. I really appreciate it. Keep us posted as you walk through the process. All right, next up, we've got Mark Grant. He left, I believe he sent an email. Yeah, this one, Mark Grant is commiserating with us. He also changed his order and it's slowing things down. Let's read it. Quote, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Changing my order, twice in my case, gave Tesla a double dose of kryptonite. I am 3 days short of 2 months since completion and still no new design plans sent to city for permit, which of course is holding up city inspection. I'm still a bit surprised Tesla's not completed this ASAP, as they do not require payment until successful inspection pass. I mean, I don't mind Tesla carrying the burden. It's $26,298, give or take, for nearly 2 months now. I would have benefited from net metering, instead losing the potential power I could have generated and sent back to the grid. But I have attached a few pictures and quote, and I mean, Tesla certainly has aligned incentives here. I don't know. Let's see how long it takes them to figure this thing out. And while we wait, let's check out those photos. If I just bring this first one full screen, should be able to see it right here. So I see you have the Powerwall Plus. That's the battery and the inverter stacked above it. If you have an electric car, that's going to be great for charging the car directly from solar, which is pretty awesome. Next one is what appears to be the gateway and the main electrical panel. So that gateway should be the Tesla branded thing on the left and the main electrical panel on the right. I see that you also have a Tesla mobile charger on that outlet. So you do have an electric car, and this might help, or this might be possible for you to tap DC right off the solar panels and charge that car. Super cool. All right, here's one of your arrays. Looks like those installers are on break. And another array here. Glamour shot on that installer. And here's one of the Tesla installers carrying a panel. I hope that's OSHA compliant. I'm sure it is. And you had mentioned that you were getting a new roof. It's a beautiful terracotta. Now, would you have gone for a Tesla solar roof if they had offered a terracotta style? Super curious. Let us know. And then this is a close-up of the subroofing. This doesn't look like it was replaced. This looks like it was the existing stuff, so they may not have had to replace much of it. And then here's a wide shot of your house with the roof work in progress. Beautiful home. And this is a close-up of one of the safety clips. Yeah, you can see it right there on the bottom. So when the guys are working on the roof, they put on harnesses and clip into these safety clips. This one appears to be right at the apex of the roof. And it's good to see they're putting safety first. Really appreciate the photos. Thank you for sharing. Keep us posted on your approval process. Ultimately, PTO, we'd love to celebrate with you when you're official. It's really awesome. So thank you to DA Poppa, Rick and Kathy, to Mark Grant, all of you for your input. Let's hear from the rest of you. Send your YouTube links, comments below. Call 203-816-5150 or email teslapowerpodcast@gmail.com. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll get into the news. So this episode, we have a full docket of 5 stories to cover. Let's get to it. The first one is from the Paso Robles Daily News. They've got a sponsored editorial piece promoting a local business for a very interesting reason. Let's read it. Quote, many benefits to supporting solar system with a backup battery. Blackouts, fires, rising utility costs. The threats to powering your homes and maintaining our day-to-day routines can feel overwhelming these days. Central Coast residents with solar systems can rest assured they have all the electricity they need with the Tesla Powerwall. Locally owned AM Sun Solar now has a large shipment of these backup batteries available for installation. We are thrilled to have a stockpile of batteries ready to be installed after weathering the inventory shortage due to the pandemic, said Mark Miller, AM Sun Solar partner and head of business development. Having a backup battery to your solar system adds a significant amount of power and flexibility, end quote. And I've covered a few of these small businesses that are building on Tesla's products, building their businesses specifically on these Tesla products, and that are advertising with local television and print outlets. What I haven't yet run into is this sales pitch that Tesla batteries are the route to energy security, and specifically that batteries are in stock. This is, I think, pretty cool. Businesses are so confident in the need for power backup that they're laying out capital in advance to get these things in stock. And now think about it, right? It's not just a matter of providing a battery quickly, right, to meet demand as it's coming up. It's also a hedge against inflation, right? They are locking in the cost to AM Sun Solar to themselves so they can then control their pricing and protect and maybe even expand margins through the fire season. So they do note that pairing batteries with solar is the best way, but this does not require solar. Batteries work just fine as backup power without solar. So because Tesla is so cell constrained, they aren't pushing this option. In fact, if you go to their website, you can see that you can't purchase Powerwalls on their own. So let's pull up the Tesla website. I can take this full screen. And if we go into the menu, we should be able to see Powerwall right here. And even though we're in the Powerwall page and we click order now, it's going to force us to put in an address. And you're going to see that this is taking us to the solar products order page. You can see here we have solar roof, solar panels. The only option they give you for Powerwalls is to either increase the numbers. Let's see if we can get down to it. Right? Increase the number of Powerwalls. Maybe more, all the way up to 10. Let's dream a little. Or you can remove the Powerwalls altogether. You can't simply order the Powerwalls on their own as an end user. And that does open a wider question of how to add batteries to an existing system. I would like to get 1 or 2 more Powerwalls at some point. I've submitted a couple of questions through my Tesla account to see how I can get pricing added, or pricing for adding Powerwalls to my installation. See how I can place my order, budget stuff in, get ready for the install. I did actually get a response right before recording this. I'll hold you in suspense until the end of the episode where I review my experience. So stay tuned. All right, so next we have an article from PV Magazine. They report on LG moving to a new battery chemistry. Quote, South Korean battery manufacturer LG Energy Solution presented its latest innovations at the Smarter E event in Munich last week. It also announced its transition from nickel manganese cobalt, that's NMC, battery chemistry to lithium iron phosphate, that's LFP, in its future products, end quote. And we will see this across the board. I mean, there are a couple of specific advantages here going away from a nickel chemistry into an iron chemistry. First is there are fewer mineral bottlenecks. So just getting the raw materials is going to be a lot easier. Second, there's the possibility of providing a lower overall cost to consumers because your cost to produce is going to come down. And you're not going to have to pay so much for constrained resources to input to make the batteries in the first place. Third is LFP, lithium iron phosphate, is a safer chemistry. And lithium iron phosphate, fourth, has less degradation over time. And we know that Tesla is going to be doing this for stationary storage. They've been saying this for a while. And I mean, honestly, I wonder if they haven't done it already. Sometimes they'll do things without announcing it to the market. And honestly, if they haven't, I'm not sure I understand why. Maybe it could be a production constraint, though there are plenty of suppliers like LG and CATL and others that are providing LFP batteries already. So it seems like something they should do ASAP, of course. Their priority is automotive, though, so I could see how maybe this wouldn't be something that they could get to right away. It's in the plans. They just can't get it done. There's all sorts of possibilities like that. Now, if we go back to the article, we can look at the photo of what they've got here, and you can see that this battery is just enormous. I mean, the LFP form factor is going to have to be about twice the size for the same capacity. I mean, this thing looks like it's almost the size of an entire wall. I mean, we don't have anything else in the photo to give us like scale or anything, but we do know that it's going to have to be larger for that same capacity because that lower energy density that lithium iron phosphate has, when compared with lithium ion, which would be lithium and nickel. But it'll be interesting to see how companies, package these residential storage solutions to make them practical to install. I mean, a behemoth like that, it'd be hard to even get through the door, let alone install it. All right, next. Clean Technica reports on possible rooftop solar mandates in the EU. Let's read it. Quote, we all know the benefits of clean, cheap, and practically limitless solar power, but despite its obvious benefits and the plentiful nature of the raw materials that go into making PV cells, most of the rooftops I see don't have solar panels on them. But that could soon change, in the EU at least, where the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, announced plans for a government mandate that would see rooftop solar power placed on all commercial and public buildings by 2027 and new residential buildings by 2029, end quote. And we already have a similar mandate in California for residential solar. I'm generally not a fan of these sorts of mandates for a couple of reasons. I mean, first, it tries to stimulate supply by artificially inducing demand. And then that in turn causes high prices and shortages because there isn't enough supply to meet demand. But secondly, it doesn't allocate resources very efficiently. I mean, even if solar doesn't make sense for an installation, they're going to have to put it in anyway. I mean, what if they're like 100% shaded or if they're, facing the wrong way? I don't know. Doing those things is really kind of dumb, right? So why would we do that to ourselves? Now, we're going to give this the benefit of the doubt, and maybe we're going to say that the ultimate goals are worth the effort. We might say, okay, What we need is energy independence, and it's better if we get it with renewable sources. So let's just make everyone bite the bullet and do this, right? If we then look at what that might look like, we could potentially see some positive effects. So the first positive effect might be all market participants would have a level playing field, as everyone would have to include the additional expense. So that's one way to look at it. Second way to look at it in a positive light is that the increased demand would pull scale out of the industry as they work to increase production to meet demand. I still just see this leaving tons of room for inefficiency. Okay, so let's frame the argument in another way. Let's think about the way we handled electricity service to the home. So if we think about it today, right, what if building codes didn't force residential and commercial builders to provide a certain level of service to their buildings? They might still find people to buy these homes and occupy these spaces, but would the buyer be getting what they assumed they paid for? Could you imagine occupants causing unsafe conditions or maybe being plagued with unreliable service as a result? That might not be clear enough, so let's think about it in terms of plumbing. Okay, what if building codes didn't force residential and commercial builders to provide water and sewer service to their buildings? I don't know. At the beginning of the plumbing transition, this might not have been a big deal, and I'm sure some people would have been happy to save the money, but we can all see how we've benefited from this in the long term. I mean, not just in convenience, but also in public health, making sure that we have clean water and that septic waste is taken away from a building in a sanitary way. And I think that might be really the question we're grappling with here when it comes to renewables. How do we want to roll this out? And how can we spread the burden as effectively as possible to accelerate the transition to renewable energy generation? It's something that we'll have to decide as a society, and I think it's something that we'll all need to participate in. So these kinds of mandates, where they might be horribly inefficient, might be the best way to ensure that we all move forward in a similar way. It's similar to building codes and things like that. And I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. I'm not making any kind of judgments, but, I'm not generally a fan of government mandates, but I can understand where they help in building a rich society. And, maybe we can see that as worthwhile enough to include in our laws in mandating. So I don't know, what kind of societal improvement does that unlock over the next decades if we all move to renewable electricity generation and renewable electricity use? At the moment, not all the benefits are obvious. Maybe cars, maybe heating, maybe crypto for you weirdos out there. But there are a couple of things that are certain, right? The first thing that's certain is that the levelized cost of electricity will decline considerably with renewables. And secondly, we can make meaningful progress toward permanent energy independence if we make this transition. And certainly we can benefit in environmental considerations along the way. Energy production and energy consumption, if it's greener, no doubt contributes to a more environmentally friendly existence for humans on the planet. Even looking into the manufacturing of these renewable products seem to be encouraging, but honestly, we'll have to wait to see if there are any hidden costs or hidden issues as we scale this up. All right, next we have an article from Clean Technica. This one's from Electrek. Let's see if I can get this going here. I just had that monitor go out. Here we go. All right, so this one's from Electrek. They report on Tesla's attempt to enter the Texas energy market. Let's read it. Quote, all the way down at the bottom. If successful, it should automatically unlock a lot of value for homeowners with solar and or home batteries, which Tesla has been deploying in Texas. The change would also allow Tesla to operate all its distributed energy assets as a virtual power plant in the state as it does in California. Tesla could combine individual extra capacity with its residential customers to provide grid services and spread the benefits between customers, thus improving the financial viability of going solar in Texas, end quote. And the magnitude of this is likely to follow something like the demand response payments we see in VPP participants in the Northeast. So we've had viewers report that it's worth a couple $1,000s a year to Powerwall owners. So maybe that's what people in Texas could see. Just depends on how stable their grid is. Now, this isn't for customers with solar, right? Keep in mind, the viability of going solar isn't directly impacted here. It's the battery storage portion that's directly impacted here. Of course, most Powerwall owners will use solar to charge them, so it's an indirect impact, still something to consider. But at the moment, Texans and Californians that participate are not yet compensated. Don't forget that. They are participating out of the goodness of their hearts in California to help improve the effectiveness of the grid and help move the utility toward acceptance. These are ultimately expected to result in value passed to the customer, like to people who own Powerwall specifically. But, I mean, Tesla gets 100% of that benefit in the meantime. They just aren't allowed to distribute those payments yet because there is no mechanism for doing it. It's also worth pointing out that customers in other service areas are starting to be given the opportunity to participate in energy markets, but they lose net metering when they do that in favor of what they refer to as export tariffs, which generally provide significantly less value. So if I were to sell my electricity back to United Illuminating, I'm only going to get a couple of cents per kilowatt hour. But if I net it out, then I get about 26 cents per kilowatt hour. So a huge difference and way more in my interest to stay with net metering. Now, there are services like demand response, frequency regulation, ramping reserve, and related services that do provide a ton of value to the grid. Grid capacity, though, just sending energy back to the grid, it's a commoditized market. It pays very poorly, and most users are likely to be way better off with net metering for a long time to come. So the data for the value of grid services and residential owners' share of that value is a huge question mark at the moment. I would love to talk to Matt Smith. He's now at Good Soil Capital, to get a better idea of some detail on this market, get his view of what we can expect as we move into this kind of market participation. All right, next we have a story from CNET. They run down the best solar companies of 2022. The top names are ADT Solar and Trinity Solar, but both Tesla Solar and Tesla Solar Roof do make the list. So let's read what they have to say about them. Quote, got to scroll pretty far down to get to it. Tesla's solar branch seems to be the least loved Elon Musk's venture. Even Tesla's solar roof seems to get more love. Still, solar panels from Tesla are likely to be the cheapest option where they are available. You can save thousands of dollars without sacrificing on quality of equipment. What you might sacrifice is customer service. From delays to price changes to slow responses to system malfunctions, social media reports of negative experience aren't hard to find, including some who regret their choice. It's true of all solar companies, but the quantity of reports concerning Tesla is concerning. It goes on to mention the solar roof. Let's see if we can find that here. Tesla solar roof is an exciting way to imagine solar right here. It's sleek, it's low profile, it's very expensive. Depending on the size of your roof and your location, it can be several times more expensive than solar panels, end quote. So not a glowing review. And they zero in on service. This is a recurring theme for Tesla. And it's not just in the energy division, right? We see it in the automotive division some too. It is super interesting to me that Tesla Solar is the cheapest. I mean, I suppose I expected it to be a premium product because Tesla is premium. But the tech that Tesla uses is old school in comparison to others. Specifically, they use string inverters rather than optimizers or microinverters. And then the solar roof, that is definitely a premium product. They call it out and, it's very expensive. And it would be great if Tesla could scale it and offer it to more customers that are happy to pay the premium. Maybe that can be facilitated as they take on more third-party installers to support this effort. And I say these third-party providers, they're great in a couple of ways. It allows Tesla to scale more quickly, and it gives customers access to the product along with probably a lot better customer service, right? Now, the largest installer in the United States is Sunrun. They get an honorable mention here because they're still more expensive than other providers. But, I mean, if they're number one, you got to admit they're doing something right. Interestingly, there is a storage solution offered with Sunrun, but it's not the norm as it's price prohibitive. So Sunrun very rarely, as far as I understand, as far as I can find, very rarely bundles battery storage with their solar products. What they do offer is an LG battery core branded as Brightbox. So just keep an eye out for that if you happen to be shopping around. I'd be interested to hear how much the bundle costs with installation. Overall, though, Tesla is doing fair. They certainly have a bit of work to do from CNET's perspective. And that'll do it for the news. Let's take another quick break. When we come back, we'll get into the featured video. So this episode, we're featuring a video on raw materials required to support scaling the transition to renewable energy. This is a key factor to the affordability of battery storage for residential solar installations. What I had originally intended was to include Stanford University's Precourt Institute for Energy. They had a video where they conducted a fireside chat with Tesla's Drew Baglino. And in that talk, he gets into some of the enormous things that need to be done over the next decade, not least of which is physically moving mountain-sized parts of Earth. So awesomely, not awesomely, the video was made private before I grabbed the clip, but I did find the reference on Dave Lee for Investing. He focuses on another aspect of this, scaling production, not on the physical moving the Earth. But he does mention the 500 terawatt hours of batteries we're going to need in the next decade or so. Let's see the clip.
Here's one of the key quotes from Drew Baglino in this interview. He says, if the industry stays on pace of growing 50% year over year, it seems possible that 300 to 500 terawatt hours of battery will be built in the next 20 years globally. We're going to need 15 to 20 terawatt hours of annual global battery capacity. So the question is, how is Tesla planning to scale batteries in a massive way to meet the global demand that's just skyrocketing in the next few decades? Here's the first clip from the interview.
You know, we've really been thinking about the typical things that you think about when you're making bread. Like the last bread factory could do 1,000 loaves an hour. I want the next bread factory to do 5,000 loaves an hour. Like, what do I do? Do I like change the chemistry and like a little bit more baking soda, a little bit more magic pixie dust, and it just rises faster? Or do I get a bigger oven? Or, you know, is my mixing going from like 1,000 liters to 10,000 liters? Is that how I make 5,000 loaves versus 1,000? You know, that's kind of like things manufacturing engineers have done for a while, and we're doing that with, you know, the bigger form factor cell and the more efficient assembly lines and the slightly different electrode processing that we're doing. That's all about how do I make that same factory do 5,000 loaves an hour, same footprint or smaller, do 5 times to 10 times more than it did before.
And it's not the clip that I wanted to share, unfortunately, but we do see that reference to 500 terawatt hours in the opening slide. And I wanted to go down a rabbit hole just to see how much Earth that actually is. So let's do the math and let's see what kind of mountain we're looking at moving over the next decade. So let's assume the lowest energy density at the highest total energy storage required to get something, you know, conservative. I mean, all of this is going to be a moving target, and energy capacity should go up from here. So if we start at that, you know, current energy density, then it should be relatively conservative. So here on Wikipedia, we can see that energy density is listed down here at 325 watt hours per liter. We see that the energy density is about in liters. Now we should be able to get that 500 terawatt hours required and divide by that density to get a total volume of battery material required to get us to this end game of how big the mountain should be. So if I pull up the calculator, we can see here, if we go 500, now a terawatt is trillion, which is 12 zeros. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? And we divide it by 325. We get 1.5 trillion, a little bit more, liters of material required. Now, Drew mentions that the ratio of Earth to refined material is in the 1 to 100 range in this video. So If we're looking at 150 trillion liters worth, right? Yeah, because 1.5 trillion divided by 100, yeah, gets us to 1.5 trillion liters of battery capacity required. So how big a mountain is that? Well, I couldn't find any volume measurements or even weight measurements for that matter when looking up stats on mountains. Boo. But I can find volume measurements for bodies of water, and that's in kilometers cubed. Now, fortunately, 1 trillion liters is a cubed kilometer, which is very convenient for us. So the conversion is simple. We're just looking for 150 kilometers cubed of Earth needed to move to get the battery capacity required by the end of the decade. Now, let's take a look at Google Maps. I've got the first candidate, which was the Dead Sea. This is in Israel on the Jordan border. And you can see how big the Dead Sea is. Now, this is 114 cubed kilometers. So this is less than the 150 cubed kilometers that we would need to move. And that, I mean, that's pretty small, right? So another one was the Lake Tahoe. I spelled it wrong, but hopefully it'll still bring it up. Yeah, so this is Lake Tahoe. This is 150 cubed kilometers. Now, this looks a lot smaller by comparison. It's really not that much smaller. It's just that the volume goes deeper. This is a mountain lake, whereas the Dead Sea is like a valley that's filled with water that's evaporating. And then another one, so this is exactly at the 150 kilometers cubed. The other one that I looked up was the Great Salt Lake. Now this one, by land area, it looks bigger. In fact, you can see it here, where you can't hardly see Lake Tahoe. You can see Lake Tahoe here, but it looks like much, much smaller. But the Great Salt Lake is only 19 cubed kilometers. And the reason it's a super shallow lake and it's shrinking considerably. But I don't know, go search your own favorite local body of water to get a better sense of scale. But what I came away thinking was, this isn't as insane as I thought it was going to be, right? I thought it was originally going to be like, I don't know, just a mountain range worth of stuff and not really just a mountain's worth, especially when you consider, who's going to be doing this work, right? Because it's really going to be spread amongst a lot of different players in a lot of places around the world. So I wonder if we might see the industry launch well beyond that 500 terawatt hours of storage to maybe twice that or more. This doesn't seem like that much physical Earth that needs to move. And every industry has some momentum. It's not like they'll stop on a dime when they reach this number, right? They'll keep producing until people don't want to buy batteries anymore. I also expect we'll find lots more things we can do with batteries as they become more available and cheaper. So all of this, super fun thought exercise, for sure. And I just wanted to make sure I went through it. Kind of a bummer about the video, but do go and view that Dave Lee video. I have the link in the description because that one is still up. He makes some really great points about how crazy Tesla's plan is to scale, and there's a lot that's got to be done in the meantime. So let's talk about my experience. I got to say it's been a really mild summer. I just want to get my phone so I can show you the app. And so far, our production hasn't really suffered that much. It's been on par with last year, but our consumption is super low. So let me just get this up. It'll take one more second to get it streaming. There we go. You can see it here. All right, so here's the house. You can see today, production is a little bit lower. We had been in the 70s. Right now we're only in 53. But since we're using so much less energy, all of this is still, working out to be a lot more than we need to use in the home. So our bill should still just be above the connection rate. And if we zoom in, we can see how these curves are. Like today's curve is super choppy. Yesterday's, that's respectable that we got 50 kilowatts yesterday with those terrible curves right there. And then the day before that, it rained all day. Like it was the first day of summer for the kids, and they couldn't even hardly go outside. I tried taking the boys to a batting cage, and that was freaking packed too. The day before was only 34, but then the day before that, I mean, we're getting back to really good curves at 76. So, there's still a lot of potential for generating good electricity this summer. But you can see the only time we're using a lot of electricity is when that air conditioner kicks on. But with the super mild weather, we're just not using that much energy. So today we're only at 37. You can see that the air conditioner started to kick on a little bit through later part of the day. But let's look at the brother-in-law system. It's trucking right along. You can see mostly because their AC went out, so they're like super glad that it's a really, really mild summer. Their monthly generation is 1.3 megawatt hours on their traditional solar panel. Let's compare that to ours. If we go back here, we do it month. So we're at 1.2 just about. So we're a little bit behind what they're producing. But I'll bet since their AC went out, they'll be spending a lot of time at our house this summer. They do have a pool, so when it gets super hot, they have a way to cut the heat. Now, last episode got me thinking about how I can add to my system, and I did mention that earlier in this episode. I guess I always thought that maybe I would just end up with a referral Powerwall or something, so I didn't think about how I might order one and go through the process. And as we saw earlier, when you go to the website, you can't order one from Tesla. So I sent a question in through the site asking about the process. And they gave me a response, and they say, quote, Powerwalls have to be ordered with your solar order. Otherwise, you would not be able to get them from Tesla, end quote. Well, that sucks. I covered this earlier in the podcast, and you'll have to find some third-party installer to both acquire and to install the Powerwall for you. So this is now confirmed by Tesla directly. I also followed up on my witness test redo, and they said they'd look into it. We continue to wait. I haven't heard anything about it. But that will do it for episode 60 of the Tesla Power Podcast. I really appreciate you guys joining me for this adventure. If you will use my referral code, you can save $300 on a solar roof and $300 on solar panels. You can go to ts.la/Aaron62310 to place your order. I'm Aaron Brady, your Tesla residential energy community organizer. Let's do this again on the next video.